Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, we come to you today thanking you for another day and an opportunity to be a blessing unto others. We have a day that is filled with change and adjustments and confusion, dear Lord. May you be with Karen and I as we have to sort things out with the workers and with the family. We ask that you bless the family members, our children, and our extended family, and be with the workers here, that they too may have a positive attitude towards the change and adjustments that are going on today on the farm. Again, be with the animals. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
This is Doug Roberts. He's raised some of the largest typical whitetails in North America. His farm produces the best hunting scents in the world. His life's quest is 200-inch typical whitetails. This is ConQuest 200. With whitetail farming, the common theme is the unexpected can always happen. Watching these graceful whitetails can be captivating. Their sheer speed and ability to change direction in a moment's notice is what keeps farmers alert. And when you have a whole herd in motion, it can be a recipe for disaster. Joining Doug Roberts on the farm today is 2009 AMA Arena Cross champion Jeff Gibson, son-in-law to Doug and Karen Roberts, and extra cameraman for today's show.
Well, it's the middle of summer, and Nate and Talon, they check the fences all the time, and Nate happened to check the fence, and he come up and he says, one of the 2-year-olds out back is limping, and we had all of our 2-year-old bucks in a pen way out in the back of the farm. I said, okay, and he said, well, it's one of the better looking ones, and I went, oh great, it's always the better ones that something goes wrong with. And so we went out and checked, and sure enough, it was a beautiful 6x6, in velvet, still growing, but definitely had a serious limp to himself. So I knew we had to dart him, and it's always a hard thing to dart a buck during the middle of the summer when the temperatures are warm, because just so many things can go wrong. The drug, the temperature, the body temperature can go up, but we didn't have an option. So we were gonna go out and dart him.
This buck at 2, he's beautiful, beautiful typical buck. We just noticed that he's starting to limp, and when you have a buck this nice out here, and it's probably the biggest buck we've ever grown, we want to get him tranquilized and figure out, the exact problems so that we can get him back on his feet and, grow next year to something even bigger and beautiful.
Nice shot.
But I actually get the first dart into him, and it's a good hit. So now is the waiting time.
Supposed to be waking up right now.
Probably one of the nicer bucks that I've ever seen at that age. It's a big mainframe 7x6. Has potential to be one of the bigger bucks that Doug's ever raised.
It's been 5 minutes, and the crew decides it's time to take a closer look.
Well, the ideal process of this happening correctly is that we hit him with one dart. He goes to sleep within 5 to 6, 7 minutes. And we get to about 7, 8 minutes, and I realize we're gonna have to hit him with a second dart.
The #1 injury to deer in the wild and on the deer farm are foot injuries. It's a constant battle. A small puncture, wound, or sprain can lead to big consequences.
When you dart a deer, there's this period of waiting in between the time that the dart hits him and the drug starts to take effect in his body. And normally it's 5 to 10 minutes on most deer. And This one just kind of seemed, it took effect, but he just kind of kept his balance, and it took a little longer than 10 minutes for him to finally go down. And you just have to be patient during that period. And it's very frustrating because you want to try to get everything done and get him back up on his feet. Once we realized that this deer just had the perfect frame that we were looking for in the genetics and the potential, and looking going, wow, this is going to be a breeder buck. We just got to get his foot fixed. Well, the good news is this, he has no puncture wound. The bad news is I don't know what he sprained, but I know he hasn't been going out to eat.
Doug Roberts has just darted a 2-year-old buck that has been limping. The job now is to investigate the issue, medicate the injury, and get this future breeder buck on his feet again.
One of the nightmares of a deer farm, raising whitetail deer, is always foot injuries. Foot injuries are one of the hardest things to heal in whitetail, especially in the middle of the summer. The bacteria and the temperature is just not conducive to being able to heal something. So looking at the quality of this buck and the quality of his antlers, so I knew he had good genetics, looking at the ankle was swollen, I just wasn't sure what we were going to get into. I had an idea that we had a puncture wound. I just didn't know how bad it was or how severe it was going to be. Well, the good news is this. He has no puncture wound. The bad news is I don't know what he sprained, but I know he hasn't been going out to eat. So we'll put a feeder in here right next to the water where he can stay in here.
After medicating the buck with vitamins, minerals, wormer, and antibiotics, the team takes quick photos for documentation. They'll return throughout the days to check whether his limp has gotten better. For now, the employees are back to work. The day has just started. At ConQuest Scents, the process of producing EverCalm always starts with one thing: the whitetails. Supplying whitetails on the farm with the best food, fresh water, and lush food plots not only produces the best scent, but also provides maximum antler growth. With over 400 whitetails, supplying them with the best comes with a hefty price.
Well, I've got a big semi full of feed coming in from Armada Grain Company. I've been with Armada for over 20 years. Well, we got the feed semi coming in to deliver our pelleted formula for the deer. You know, and he's bringing in, I believe it's 18 ton. In fact, there he is right there. So that won't even fill the bins, but you're looking at about a $9,000 bill. Tracy Braun, the nutritionist of Armada Grain, has got this feed formula down to where the vitamin and mineral pack in it is the most digestible for the deer of any feed that I know of on the market. They put roasted soybeans in the 18%, right? And so they actually can eat less and get more out of what they eat. So I'm actually saving money. It costs me more money per ton up front, but they're able to absorb and get the nutrients, what they need out of what they do eat, more efficiently. Therefore, they're eating less feed, so I end up saving money in the long run. Now this time of year in the summer, we actually will add a couple 100 pounds per ton of roasted soybean. Now the difference with roasted soybean to regular soybean is a regular soybean has that coating over the top of it, and it only allows the animal to eat so much of it before it gets a stomach ache. So by roasting them, it takes that coating off, and the digestibility intake that the deer's body can get out of that roasted soybean is much, much higher. On our older mature deer, our bucks, we can increase antler growth on them somewhere around 5 to 8 inches of what they would normally do just by adding roasted soybeans. So we add that in for the summer. It also gives the does more milk production to the fawns, so we actually have healthier fawns, healthier does.
Coming up next, The 2-year-old buck with a limp has an infection that could pose big problems. Doug Roberts has been checking on a 2-year-old buck with a limp. Since medicating him the last time, things seem to be worse.
Get it. Don't get it. I don't know. There's not a mark on him. It's just right on the leg.
Well, I have been talking with Kurt Dunkel from Dunkel Veterinary Hospital, which has always, I've worked with him for years on animals that we've had problems with. Now, I could figure a lot of stuff out on the farm, but this was past my point of knowledge. I just did not understand what was going on. So I called Kurt. It was amazing because he was scheduled for back surgery the next day and he couldn't even move. His wife actually brought him out.
Thinner and thinner and thinner. Now he's eating. It's this leg. I don't know if it's I mean, he's completely off it now. There's not a hole in his foot. He's got two of them. Got this here, but he's got this big nodule, and that wasn't there last week when we darted him. Two-year-old. Yeah. Honestly, probably the biggest 2-year-old I've ever raised.
But being a good friend and knowing that this deer was so important to me, looked at him and goes, wow, this is not good. And I kind of explained what had happened and what we've been dealing with. He said, you know, we need to culture it. We need to get a culture of the infection so we know exactly what we're dealing with, so we know what antibiotics to give it that'll continuously fight and how often.
I got a paper toweling, Kurt, Nate.
We looked and he took a culture from the sore on the side of the jaw, and the jaw had actually been enlarged. And we gave it a bunch of different medicines. He had an idea of what it was, but he really wanted to make sure.
The plan now is to isolate the buck in close quarters. This allows Doug to monitor the whitetail and medicate as often as needed. This 200-inch whitetail happens to be one of the largest 2-year-old bucks Doug has ever raised. Normally, whitetails of this stature are named on the ConQuest farm, but not this one. Not yet.
I would lay him like right in here. And then just, yeah. I would turn him so his head's uphill.
And sure enough, a couple days later, he gives me a call. After he's had back surgery of all things, and he goes, it's lumpy jaw. And that's the bacteria that's in the ground naturally, and this deer just happened to be weak enough that it got into his system and really started to multiply. So he gave me the antibiotics that I needed to give this deer, but he goes, Doug, you gotta give it to him every day. We put him into a holding stall. We can move him into the deer squeeze, up through the barn, and actually manually work with him without having to tranquilize him every other day.
There's a little different feeling when you open the doors for a doe as opposed to opening the doors and seeing a big, gigantic 180 to 200-inch rack sitting there staring you in the face. You want to make sure you get control of that right away for sure.
In my mind, I was confident we were going to lose the deer. I was really sick to my stomach that we had this beautiful 6x6 2-year-old, you know, right at 200 inches, and I was just, it's what I dream about. That is the look that I've always wanted on this farm. And I just realized this deer is going to die.
Doug Roberts has been medicating a 2-year-old buck that has an infection called lumpy jaw. Every couple days, they bring the buck into the squeezer, medicate him, and check on his infection.
It seemed to work. It seemed to work for a while, and so we kind of left him and we stretched the days out to 4 or 5 days and seemed to be doing good. And so we released him back out with a group of bucks. It was, again, 4 or 5 days, and he started going back downhill. And the swelling was still in his leg, it was still in his face. So we made the decision again to bring him back in.
We gave him shots, antibiotics, but once we pulled him into the squeeze, we realized how sick he really was because he didn't fight at all. It only took one of us to hold him down, and he just drug his head. So you could really tell after that he was not feeling good.
We have fall coming in now. We've gone from the middle of summer all the way to fall. We're getting into October here, and he hasn't put any body weight on. And I just looked and went, there's no way this deer is going to be able to survive the winter, even a normal winter, with no body size. He's going to freeze to death. In my mind, I was confident we were going to lose the deer. I was really sick to my stomach that we had this beautiful 6x6 2-year-old, right at 200 inches, and I was just, it's what I dream about. That is the look that I've always wanted on this farm, and I just realized this deer is going to die.
Doug has darted the buck and has decided it's time to collect semen and then let nature take its course.
So can we get semen out of this deer? Are we able to, preserve his genetics? Even if he passes on, can we still use him through artificial insemination and hopefully get sons and daughters out of him that we can capture that 6x6 frame? So I kind of, in my mind, had made the decision, let's try to keep him alive and keep him healthy enough to get semen out of him, and then we'll do the best that we can and let Mother Nature take its course. So we actually put him on lactate ringer. We gave him an IV, we gave him all of his antibiotics, we gave him everything that we could possibly give him to give him an advantage. And Dr. Briggins happened to say, do you have any probiotics or microbiomes, which are live active organisms that actually help digest and intake nutrients out of the food they eat? I said, absolutely. So we put him back out in this, and we put some of that Revive in the water, and we also sprinkle it on the food in the feed trough. And I'm telling you, within 2 weeks, I was amazed. You will not believe this, but you cannot see a bone on this deer's body. He was gaining pounds by the day.
There's been talk about naming him Diehard. I think it's a pretty good name because he was on the brink of dying and none of us thought he'd live.
And now, what seems to be the most fitting name for a whitetail that has endured so much and has beaten all odds. Meet Diehard, a 200-inch breeder buck that lives on ConQuest Deer Farm. With his genetics in the tank and in the field, his story lives on.
And we're all in awe. We've watched these boys with no names, but just a number, become majestic men with names that are profound and eventually end up in a semen tank and be recreated and be part of this lineage that carries on and on and on.
Stay tuned for scenes of next week's episode.
Well, today we're actually going to go out and dart the two biggest breeder bucks on the farm. We're going to try to collect semen. Crusader is the largest typical 2-year-old in North America. We can't afford a single mistake on this deer.
For more info and behind-the-scenes action, visit ConQuest200.com.